Getting rich is much easier than you imagine. Have you ever wondered why some people, even starting from scratch, manage to transform their lives into success stories, while others never get anywhere? This barrier is not external, but in the mind. Have you ever stopped to think that perhaps the biggest lie you've ever been told is that getting rich is difficult? Well, since you were a child, you've heard that money only comes with sweat and suffering, that poor is better but honest, that the rich are lucky or have an inheritance. But what if I told you that believing this is precisely what's keeping you from prosperity? That's the shock. It's not a lack of effort that holds so many people back. It's the invisible mental programming they carry without realizing it. Now, hold on to this provocation. If you keep thinking the way you've always thought, you'll keep living the way you've always lived. And that may hurt to hear, but it's also liberating, because it means you have a choice. The life you dream of can start changing today. Not because someone will give you money, but because you'll learn to think, act, and feel like someone who's already succeeded. What you'll hear here isn't empty theory. These are applicable principles, tested by millionaires and confirmed by real stories. That can change your life. And here's the promise: if you watch this video until the end and truly apply at least one of the lessons I'll share, the way you view money, opportunities, and even yourself will never be the same. You'll realize that prosperity isn't a fluke, but a natural consequence of a reprogrammed mind. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'll show you exactly how ordinary people change the course of their lives, and how you can be next. Have you ever stopped to think why some people, even starting with absolutely nothing, manage to build a prosperous life, while so many others, despite their hard work, remained stuck at the same point? It's intriguing to note how there are stories of people who came from the outskirts, faced debt, humiliation, and even discredit from their own families, but managed to completely turn things around and achieve results that seem impossible for most. Meanwhile, others, who even had more resources or better conditions, continue to live limited lives, as if carrying a weight on their shoulders. The big question is that this weight isn't external. It's not just the bills, nor the lack of opportunities, nor the difficult market. The real weight is within the mind. It's like an invisible wall, built little by little with words, negative experiences, and beliefs repeated so often that they become absolute truths. This wall isn't visible, but it is felt. It appears when an opportunity arises, and the first reaction is fear. It manifests itself when a person thinks, "This isn't for me. People like me never get this far. It's better not to try, because I'll fail again." These thoughts act like invisible chains, holding us back and limiting our progress. It doesn't matter how talented, creative, or dedicated we are. If we believe we don't deserve to thrive, we'll find ways to sabotage our own progress. It's like trying to plant seeds in concrete. No matter how good the seeds are, they'll never blossom because the soil isn't fertile. And the most shocking thing is that many people spend years trying to change the fruit of the tree, seeking more money, more recognition, more success, but forget to care for the root, which is our mindset. Without healthy roots, the tree never grows as it should. And here's a secret few realize: the mind can be trained just like a muscle. Just as someone goes to the gym to strengthen their body, it's also possible to exercise thoughts that strengthen confidence, clarity, and courage. The difference is that these workouts don't require expensive equipment or sophisticated environments. They begin in silence, the moment a person decides to replace phrases of defeat with questions of possibility, such as, "What if this worked?" "What would be the next step?" Or "What can I learn from this?" I've seen ordinary people transform their lives simply by changing a single phrase they repeated every day. One woman I knew, for example, constantly said, "Money is suffering." No matter how hard she worked, it seemed like a problem always arose to take it away. Until one day, in a personal finance course, she was challenged to swap that phrase for another. Money is a tool for freedom. At first it sounded strange, almost false. But little by little, she began repeating it, writing it down, putting it on post-it notes around the house. Months later, not only had her relationship with money changed, but she also began seeking new sources of income, invested in a small business, and achieved a stability she had never experienced before. What changed? Her job was the same, the city was the same, but the mind ground had been transformed. This is the power of realizing that the real battle isn't out there, but within. When someone changes their way of thinking, they also change their way of seeing opportunities. Where once they saw only problems, they begin to see steps. Where once they felt like a victim, they begin to see themselves as protagonists. And it's at this point that prosperity ceases to be just a distant concept and becomes a possible reality. Think about it. How many times have you let an opportunity pass you by, not because you weren't capable, but because your mind whispered, better not to risk it? How many projects have been left on paper because they seemed too risky? How many dreams have been shelved because they believed the timing wasn't right? These are silent proofs that the invisible wall exists and that it is powerful. But here comes the most liberating point. If this wall was built by thoughts, it can also be torn down by new thoughts. It's as if each negative belief were a brick placed there over the years. Bricks of phrases heard in childhood. Money doesn't fall from the sky. Rich people are dishonest. There's no point in dreaming big. Bricks of failed experiences, of frustrated attempts, of unfair comparisons. Bricks that, without realizing it, were stacked until a wall was built. But just as this wall was built, it's also possible to begin removing it, brick by brick, until the horizon appears again. It's a process that requires patience, but each new thought, each positive mental habit, is like lifting a weight and making room for light to enter. And perhaps the most fascinating part of all this is understanding that this key is in no one's hands but your own. It doesn't depend on inheritance, diploma, government, or perfect circumstances. The key has always been within you, hidden in the way you choose to think every day. Some people spend their entire lives searching for magical doors to prosperity, never realizing the doorknob was there, waiting only for a turn of courage. The secret is not to wait for someone to open the door, but to take responsibility for turning that mental key. And when someone finally discovers this, life is never the same again. Now the big question is, if the key is already in your hands, if the wall can be torn down and the soil renewed, what's the next step? What's the first place within your mind that needs to be transformed for prosperity to begin flowing naturally? While most people wake up in the morning already consumed with anxiety about how they'll pay the month's bills, there's a small group of people who wake up with a completely different question. How can I grow today? This difference seems simple, but it's precisely the dividing line between a life of scarcity and a life of abundance. The scarcity mindset is like a filter that distorts reality, causing people to see only problems, obstacles, and limitations. It's that inner voice that repeats, "It's not possible. It's not for me. I'll fall flat on my face again." The abundance mindset, on the other hand, looks at the same scenarios, but with a different perspective. Instead of seeing barriers, it perceives hidden opportunities. Where one sees debt, the abundant mindset sees an invitation to learn about financial management. Where one sees a saturated market, the abundant mindset sees an opening for innovation. It's like two people facing the same landscape. One sees a storm, the other sees fertile soil, ripe for cultivation. And this cultivation doesn't happen by chance. People with a millionaire mindset develop internal habits that function like daily seeds. One of them is emotional discipline, which allows them to stay focused even when everything seems contrary. Another is faith, not a naive faith that expects miracles to fall from the sky, but a practical trust that transforms prayer into direction and action into movement. And then there's creative visualization, a powerful and almost secret habit of great achievers. While many spend time imagining the worst that could happen, those who cultivate abundance use their imagination as a creative tool. They visualize in detail what they want to achieve. The company up and running, the book published, the packed lecture hall, the balanced bank account. This practice isn't daydreaming, it's mental training. The brain, when visualizing something intensely, begins to unconsciously seek ways to transform that scene into reality. It's the same principle used by high-performance athletes, who mentally rehearse victory before taking the field. What separates those who thrive from those who merely survive isn't the number on their bank statement, but what happens inside their minds, in the silence of the early hours of the day. While some allow themselves to be guided by insecurity and repeat old patterns, others decide to program their minds for different outcomes. It's as if life were an immense field, full of ready-made seeds, but only those who believe they can harvest take the trouble to plant. And each thought is a seed, each habit is a watering can, each visualization is a ray of sunshine warming the ground. Now, if we understand that abundance begins in the mind, a new, inevitable question arises. What are the practical habits that transform this vision into concrete, everyday results? When the alarm clock rings, there are two ready-made scenarios waiting to be chosen. In the first, the mind jumps out of bed with the age-old question, how can I pay this month's bills? In the breath catches just thinking about the bank statement. In the second, the mind adjusts the volume of the world, takes a sip of filtered coffee and whispers, how can I grow today? It seems like a detail, but it's a game changer. The scarcity mindset sees the day as a marathon of putting out fires. Everything becomes urgent, nothing becomes construction. The abundance mindset, however, sees the same scenario as a construction site. Problems are raw material, and each obstacle, if polished, becomes a stepping stone. Those who operate in scarcity tend to speak the language of lack. It's impossible, I can't. And without realizing it, install a filter that erases opportunities from the radar. Those who operate in abundance speak the language of creation. What if? What's the next step? Who can contribute? And with that, activates the internal GPS to find gaps where most only see walls. It's funny. Two people see the same crowded market. One gives up. The other will niche down better, package differently, and communicate more precisely. See how the lens changes what reality delivers. This shift in lens doesn't come out of nowhere. It's cultivated. Abundance, ultimately, is an emotional discipline, almost a daily liturgy. First, a person decides which source to draw from. News that only overthrows, or knowledge that organizes thoughts. Then they define rituals that shield their focus. Instead of opening their phone in the first few minutes, they open their notebook. Instead of rushing to email, they rush to their purpose. 5 to 10 minutes of silence, prayer, breathing, meditation. And the brain shifts from alarm mode to strategy mode. Next, they write down a clear intention. Better serve a client, finish the first page of the ebook, record a short video teaching something. It's not poetry. It's attention engineering. And attention, when well-directed, becomes an asset. Creative visualization acts as a trial run for victory. It's not delirium, but neural training. The person closes their eyes and, for 2 or 3 minutes, sees themselves signing a contract, delivering an impactful lecture, launching a course with the first enrollments pouring in. The more sensory, smells, sounds, textures of the scene, the more the brain perceives it as familiar. Familiarity reduces fear, and less fear encourages action. It's the same logic athletes use. Before executing, they mentally rehearse the action. The result? Less hesitation in the nick of time, more fluidity when it counts. On a practical level, you can feel the difference as early as Monday. While scarcity asks, what's missing? Abundance maps what depends on me. The person with abundance asks questions that open doors. What recurring problem for my audience can I solve in a 10-minute video? What service can I transform into a product with a beginning, middle, and end? In what boring part of my process can become a tutorial and then a digital product? Instead of getting lost in the general, they focus on the specific. A down-to-earth example. Someone who bakes homemade cakes and makes a living from orders can create a perfect cake guide for beginners, sell it at an affordable price, capture email addresses, and in the process, pave the way for a paid workshop. Someone who provides home organization consulting can publish a home in 30 minutes checklist and offer an express session. Someone who works in video editing can launch ready-made template packs for beginner creators. This is how, little by little, abundance moves from rhetoric to cash flow. And yes, faith has a seat at this table. Not a naive faith that outsources results, but a faith that organizes the heart while the person organizes the schedule. When motivation fails, and it does, rituals come into play, reading for 15 minutes of something that raises the mental ceiling. Think and Grow Rich. The Richest Man in Babylon, a good biography. Write 3 self-suggestions that reposition your identity. Acts courageously, creates value daily, multiplies opportunities, and execute a minimal, non-negotiable action before lunch. A pitch sent, a video published, a drafted lesson. It may seem small, but consistency is like a drip in a stone. At first, no one sees it, but after a while, the mark is there, indisputable. And it is precisely at this pace that the scenario changes. The mind ceases to be arid terrain and becomes a well-tended garden. Now, if the right lens is already in place, the question remains: what are the practical daily habits that cement this millionaire mindset to the point of making it impossible to ignore? Those who look from the outside tend to believe that wealth is born from a great stroke of luck or a stunning, almost cinematic achievement. But those who have already walked the path know the uncomfortable truth. Prosperity is built behind the scenes through the sum of small, daily victories that seem invisible to others but accumulate like solid bricks in the structure of a solid future. It's not inheritance, nor extraordinary talent, nor even genius that weighs most heavily. It's the routine that repeats itself when no one is applauding. And that's where the difference reveals itself. While many waste hours on distractions, those who develop a millionaire mindset cultivate habits that seem simple, even banal, but which operate like silent engines of transformation. Among these habits, intentional reading occupies a prominent place. Those who thrive read not out of obligation, but out of a hunger for wisdom. It's not just about devouring pages, but about choosing books that expand the mind and help us see opportunities invisible to the common eye. Someone who wants to understand wealth can start with classics like The Richest Man in Babylon or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which teach basic financial principles we rarely learn in school. Others delve into inspiring biographies, like those of Steve Jobs or Oprah Winfrey, to absorb practical lessons about resilience and vision. Reading every day, even for 15 minutes, is like watering a plant. Growth isn't immediate, but inevitable. Each underlined sentence, each idea jotted down, shapes a new way of thinking, and this new mindset is reflected, sooner or later, in the decisions that generate prosperity. Another essential habit is intentional silence. It can be through prayer, meditation, or conscious breathing. This moment isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Those who live without pausing their minds are like navigating a ship through a storm without ever checking the compass. 5 minutes of alignment in the morning can be more valuable than hours of aimless running. It's there that a person remembers why they started, organizes their thoughts, and strengthens their faith. Some write their intentions in a journal. Others simply take a deep breath and repeat a simple phrase like, "Today I choose to grow." This practice reprograms the mind to act with focus, rather than reacting to chaos. Writing is also a powerful and often underestimated habit. Writing brings clarity. Putting thoughts, goals, and even worries on paper helps organize the mind. It's different from simply thinking, because when words take concrete form, doubts are exposed and solutions become more visible. A simple technique is to write 3 positive affirmations every day, such as, "I am disciplined, I attract opportunities, I act with courage." Then write down a practical goal, such as, "I will submit a job proposal today." This combination of strengthened identity and defined action creates a bridge between the invisible and the visible. Planning is another pillar of this routine. Without it, any wind turns into a storm. Planning isn't about complicating life with endless spreadsheets, but about clarifying what truly matters. It's about looking at the day and asking, what 3 things, if I do them, will make this day productive? Millionaires know how to say no to what doesn't matter, because they understand that every unnecessary yes costs energy, time, and even money. And there is no prosperity without clarity. Those who try to embrace everything end up building nothing. Those who learn to prioritize build the path to financial freedom brick by brick. And then comes the practice of creative visualization. It's curious how most people use their imagination to fuel fears. They imagine accidents, failures, rejections. Millionaires do the opposite. They train their brains to envision victory before it happens. They close their eyes, and see themselves already living the outcome. They feel the scene, hear the voices, notice the details. It's as if they're rehearsing the life they desire, and by doing so, they prepare their body and mind to act toward that scenario. This isn't fantasy, it's science. The brain doesn't distinguish reality from imagination when emotions are strong. Thus, what is repeated clearly in the mind tends to materialize because it influences daily choices, and it is these choices that shape destiny. These habits aren't frills, they're survival tools for those who want to thrive. A martial artist like Anderson Silva, for example, didn't build his greatness solely with punches and kicks. It took years of disciplined routine, silent training, and practices invisible to the public. The stage was merely the consequence. Similarly, financial and personal prosperity doesn't appear suddenly. It springs from the invisible realm of routine. And it's in this invisible realm that the power of the millionaire mind lies hidden. Now, if it is true that wealth is born from these small daily habits, an inevitable challenge arises. How to transform this discipline into something sustainable, even when everything around us seems to be falling apart. Failure. Just hearing that word sends a shiver down many people's spines, as if it were a definitive seal of defeat. For the scarcity mindset, failure means the end of the line, a kind of sentence that allows no new beginning. It's the student who gets a low grade and concludes they'll never be good at math. It's the entrepreneur who closes their first company and decides the business world isn't for them. It's the person who's disappointed in a relationship and concludes they'll never find someone worthwhile again. For this mindset, every failure is proof of inadequacy. But for those who have developed the millionaire mindset, failure isn't a grave, it's a school. It's not the final period, it's a comma. Mistakes in this case become a learning laboratory. Each failed attempt reveals what doesn't work, and this information is too precious to waste. It's the difference between those who see pain as punishment and those who see it as a seed of growth. Think of Thomas Edison, who failed more than 1,000 times in his attempt to invent the light bulb. He was asked how he dealt with so much failure, and his answer was brilliant. "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I figured out 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb." It's this kind of outlook that turns failures into stepping stones. Millionaires understand that every fall is an opportunity to rise stronger, more prepared, more aware. The Bible already said in Proverbs 24:16, "A righteous man falls 7 times and gets up again." This isn't just a pretty phrase, but a law of life. Falling is part of the process. Getting up is a choice. While some give up after the second stumble, others have fallen 10 times and keep going, because they see purpose beyond the pain. Emotional discipline acts as an anchor here. It prevents a person from being held hostage by the mood of the day, circumstances, or the opinions of others. Instead of deciding based on what they feel in the moment, they decide based on the purpose they carry in their heart. This way of facing failure changes everything. Imagine someone who invests time in learning to play the guitar. In the early days, their fingers hurt, the notes sound out of tune, and it's natural to think about giving up. But those who persist, even in the face of pain and frustration, one day realize that the music begins to flow. The same happens in business, in personal life, in any field. Initial failure is not proof of inability, but the necessary rehearsal for victory. It's like a seed that must die in the soil before it can blossom. In the universe of abundance, failure is the refinement of the soul, a training ground for resilience, the raw material for greater achievements. And it is precisely because they have learned to see failure as part of the journey that millionaires manage to maintain clarity when headwinds are against them. For them, each failure brings a hidden lesson and an opportunity to grow in wisdom. But then the question that will guide us forward arises: how to maintain this posture of resilience amidst the most intense crises, when life seems to be falling apart on all sides? Persistence in the face of financial hardship is perhaps one of the greatest secrets of the millionaire mindset. Most people view periods of crisis as signals to stop, as if life were saying, "This isn't for you." When bills pile up, when the phone rings with demands, when the refrigerator seems too empty, the scarcity mind's first reaction is to retreat give up, and seek shelter. But those who cultivate the abundance mindset learn to interpret these scenarios differently. Financial pain isn't a sentence. It's a demanding but wise teacher, imparting lessons impossible to learn in times of prosperity. While some see the crisis as the end, others treat it as an intensive school for growth. Think about how many entrepreneurs went broke once, twice, 3 times before getting it right. Many of the greatest names in the history of wealth experienced bankruptcies that would have destroyed any ordinary person. Walt Disney, for example, went bankrupt more than once before creating the empire that bears his name. Henry Ford went broke before founding the Ford Motor Company. Napoleon Hill himself told stories of men who, at the height of debt, chose to persist a little longer. And it was precisely that one more step that made all the difference. The truth is that most give up when they're inches from victory. It's like a prospector who digs for years, gets just inches from the gold vein, but, tired, drops the pickaxe. The persistent, however, keeps digging, even when it seems crazy, and it is they who find the treasure. To maintain this spirit, millionaires create systems. They know that motivation is unreliable. It falters, wavers, and disappears. So instead of relying on feeling like they want to, they create routines that act as rails. They write down their goals daily, visualize their objectives, and revisit the reasons that led them to begin. Some use empowering phrases, others keep vision boards in sight, and still others have mentors or groups that sustain them emotionally on dark days. This support system acts as armor against the onslaught of doubt. When emotions scream, "Stop!" the system whispers, "Keep going." It's emotional discipline in action, not getting swept away by the storm of the moment, but remaining steadfast in the long-term purpose. Discipline is the bridge between chaos and growth. It prevents today's emotions from destroying tomorrow's plans. It's like planting a tree. If you give up and uproot the sapling every time a storm hits, you'll never see the fruits. Millionaires understand that storms come to everyone, but only those who weather them reap the rewards. What's more, many have discovered that some doors only open in the midst of a crisis. It was in times of recession that giant companies were born, and it was amid debt that some found innovative ideas. What makes the difference is the ability to stay in the game when others give up. Persistence doesn't mean ignoring pain, but transforming it into fuel. It means learning from each setback, adjusting your course, and moving forward. And here, a crucial point arises. If persistence is what keeps us going through crises, how can we achieve the true freedom of not relying on external circumstances to continue growing? Persistence when everything is going well is easy. Persistence, when things are upside down, is the true test of character. Most people, when they feel the financial squeeze, panic. Bills pile up, credit cards max out, rent is late, and their heart races as if it's the end. It's at this point that the scarcity mentality screams, "Give up, there's no point. Nothing works for you." And it's precisely there that the dividing line between those who stop and those who grow emerges. Millionaires aren't someone who's never been in need. On the contrary, most of them have faced hardships that would make anyone throw in the towel. But the difference is that they understand that the crisis isn't an end-of-the-road sign. It's a transition portal. Persistence in the face of financial chaos isn't stubbornness. It's maturity. It's believing that today's pain can be transformed into fuel for tomorrow's achievements. Consider the example of J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series. Before becoming a billionaire, she was an unemployed single mother, living on government assistance and battling depression. Many publishers rejected her manuscript. Anyone with a scarcity mindset would have given up, believing it was a sign her idea was worthless. But she persisted, insisted, and knocked on more doors. The result, she built one of the world's biggest literary and film franchises. It wasn't an absence of failures. It was resilience in the face of them. The same goes for Walt Disney, who ended up sleeping on park benches after his first bankruptcy, yet still didn't give up on his vision. Persistence isn't magic. It's the daily choice to keep going, even when the odds seem to scream impossible. But how can we sustain this choice on the most difficult days? This is where the wisdom of those who build systems comes in. They don't rely solely on motivation. because they know that motivation is like a match. It flares quickly, but goes out with the wind. What sustains it is the system, the set of habits and practices that become non-negotiable. It's the businessman who writes down his goals every morning, even when he feels like nothing will change. It's the entrepreneur who keeps a gratitude journal, remembering each small victory, because she knows it strengthens her on days when she only sees defeat. It's the student who continues reading 10 pages a day, even when the results don't appear, because she understands she is planting roots. It's like building a stone wall, each day a stone, small, heavy, but firm. From the outside looking in, nothing happens. But one day the structure is there, solid, unshakable. The Bible gives us a powerful principle in Galatians 6:9. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. This is the essence of persistence. The problem isn't sowing too little, it's giving up before the harvest. Life rewards those who persevere. Think of Joseph, sold by his brothers, betrayed, and unjustly imprisoned. Anyone would have given up on their faith. But he persisted. When the opportunity arose, he was ready to rule Egypt. Persistence transforms prisons into palaces. In practice, persevering amid financial difficulties means adjusting your outlook. Instead of thinking, I have nothing, the millionaire asks, what can I do with what I have? Perhaps it's learning a new skill, monetizing a dormant talent, selling something forgotten around the house, or simply cutting back on unnecessary expenses to gain momentum. These are simple steps, but they keep the wheel turning. It's also about creating self-suggestion rituals. Repeating phrases like, I am bigger than my problems. This crisis doesn't define my future. I'm disciplined, and I will succeed. This isn't self-deception. It's mental repositioning. The mind needs to be reminded daily that failure is temporary, but vision is permanent. And there's also a practical truth. Many millionaires were born amid crises. Companies like Microsoft and Uber emerged during recessions. When the world regresses, those who persist find space to create. It's in the desert that we learn to value water. Persistence doesn't mean ignoring the pains of the present, but believing that within them lies a hidden lesson, a raw gold waiting to be polished. And it is precisely at this point that the door to freedom opens. If we can weather crises with persistence, the next step is learning not to depend on external circumstances to thrive. There's a quiet freedom that few experience, the freedom from dependence, not depending on a boss to determine whether you will have a paycheck at the end of the month, not depending on favors from relatives or friends to pay a bill, not depending on a single contract, an unstable government, or an economy that changes its rules at any moment. This freedom has a name, financial self-sufficiency. And it's not a luxury for the few, but a right for everyone who decides to build their life on solid foundations. Being financially independent doesn't mean having millions sitting in the bank. It means waking up in the morning and knowing you have choices. It means being able to say no when something violates your values. It means having the lightness to plan for the future without the constant weight of fear. Those who live trapped in dependence know how suffocating it is. It's like walking with chains around their ankles. Every step is measured, every decision is limited. Those who achieve financial independence, however, experience a peace that can't be bought anywhere. It's not just about numbers, but about awareness. It's an internal state of maturity in which the person understands that their life is not in the hands of others. This is where the millionaire mentality comes in. They don't wait for the government to change, for the company to recognize it, for luck to knock on the door. They create, build, and prepare. It's like the farmer who doesn't depend on the clouds to plant, because they've learned to dig wells and channel water. The self-sufficient don't escape reality, but build tools to thrive in it. And how do you build this independence? First, by breaking the illusion that a single salary is enough. Those who depend on only one source of income are building their lives on shaky ground. If the ground gives way, everything collapses. That's why millionaires learn early to create multiple income streams. Some invest in real estate, others in stocks, others in businesses. Many start small, a digital course, a YouTube channel, an ebook, a handmade product, a side hustle. Each new source is like a pillar supporting the house. At first it may seem small, but with discipline, these pillars grow and multiply. It's like Proverbs 13:11 says, "Dishonestly money dwindles, but whoever gathers little by little increases." The key isn't speed, it's consistency, and don't think this is a privilege of those who already have a lot. On the contrary, many of the greatest stories of independence were born precisely from those who had little but decided to think big. Oprah Winfrey could have been just another statistic of pain. A woman, black, poor, abused as a child, everything conspired to make her life marked by scarcity. But she made a decision. No one would define her destiny for her. With faith, discipline, and vision, she built a communications empire, became a billionaire, and helped millions of people around the world. Independence began within her, even before it manifested itself externally. That's the secret. Being self-sufficient begins in the mind. It's an internal choice to no longer accept being held hostage. Self-sufficiency doesn't mean pride or isolation. The self-sufficient person doesn't reject help, but they don't expect it as their only salvation. They cooperate, but they don't depend. They connect, but they don't rely blindly. They are free because they built their own foundations. And this protects against something silent, manipulation. When you depend financially on someone, that person has power over your peace. It could be a boss, a spouse, a relative, or even a system. But when you're independent, the decisions are yours. You negotiate with poise, live with purpose, and work with meaning. This freedom brings something no amount of money can buy: peace of mind. Knowing you can support your family, honor your commitments, and plan for the future without fear is a tranquility that resonates in your heart. And when this peace arrives, your choices change. You don't accept just any offer. You don't sell yourself short. You begin to live with dignity and vision. It's like Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." The self-sufficient do not live as slaves. They live as masters. But then a necessary provocation arises. If independence is possible for anyone who decides to build it, why do so many people remain trapped in invisible chains? What separates those who achieve this freedom from those who never escape the cycle of dependence? In true wealth isn't just about having significant sums in your bank account. It's about having autonomy. It's waking up in the morning knowing that your life isn't in the hands of others, that your peace doesn't depend on a boss's mood, a company's deadline, or someone's generosity. Financial self-sufficiency is this freedom to decide the course of your own life, without being held hostage by circumstances. And believe me, it starts long before money. It starts in the mind. People trapped in a scarcity mentality believe the only way out is to wait for a raise, a promotion at work, or even a stroke of luck. They live like passengers on a train they never control. Those who cultivate the millionaire mentality, however, take the wheel. They refuse to let their lives be decided by external forces. They create alternatives, build routes, and plant seeds in various terrains, because they understand that relying on a single pillar is living on shaky ground. Imagine a Brazilian worker who lives off the minimum wage. They wake up early, brave crowded buses, spend the entire day doing heavy work, and at the end of the month, the money barely covers basic bills. For most, the conclusion is clear. There's no way around it. This is life. But I've seen people in this exact situation who decided to turn things around. A woman who worked as a day laborer started selling homemade cakes on weekends. At first, she only baked for neighbors. Then she created an Instagram page, started posting photos, and soon the orders grew. Today, in addition to continuing as a day laborer, she has a side income that already represents almost half of her main job's income. Small steps, big transformations. This is self-sufficiency in the making. Starting with what you have, gradually multiplying, opening new sources of income until dependence diminishes. The secret is to diversify. Millionaires never put all their eggs in one basket. If one pillar falls, the others hold the house together. And this isn't just a distant theory. It's a practice that can be applied in everyday life. I know app drivers who, in addition to driving, created YouTube channels to teach fuel-saving strategies, and now earn money through advertising. I've seen teachers who started giving private lessons online and, in a short time, created digital courses. I've seen artisans who started selling their pieces at local fairs and, over time, opened online stores. All of these are examples of how to create multiple income streams. It's not about starting big. It's about getting started. As Proverbs 13:11 says, "Dishonestly money dwindles, but whoever gathers little by little increases." It's in this little by little that solidity is built. But self-sufficiency isn't just a matter of pocketbooks. It's a matter of attitude. It's about stepping out of the victim role and taking on the role of perpetrator. It's about stopping waiting for someone else to solve the problem and starting to take action. It's like in soccer. Some people sit in the stands complaining about the referee, the pitch, the coach. Others take the field and play with what they have. The self-sufficient person plays. They don't blindly rely on favors. They don't expect inheritances. They don't surrender to chance. They create conditions. And here lies a hard truth. As long as you depend financially on someone, that person will have power over your peace. It could be the boss who threatens to cut your salary, the partner who controls the household finances, or even the government that changes the rules of the game. The self-sufficient person takes this power from others and takes it back, and it's not about pride. The self-sufficient person doesn't reject help, but understands that help is support, not salvation. They cooperate and share, but don't place themselves in a hostage position. They negotiate with poise, knowing they can live without giving up their freedom. This brings a priceless peace. Imagine waking up, knowing that if one contract falls through, you still have 3 others supporting the household. Imagine being able to say no to proposals that violate your values because you don't need to sell yourself to survive. Imagine looking to the future without fear because you have reserves, multiple income streams, and the wisdom to manage them. This is true wealth, not just money, but dignity. In Brazil, we have powerful examples of those who built this independence. Luisa Trajano, for example, didn't inherit a fortune, but built one of the largest retail chains in the country. Her distinguishing feature wasn't just her business acumen, but her independent mindset. She didn't wait for perfect conditions. She created them. Jorge Paulo Lemann, one of Brazil's richest men, started small but always understood the importance of multiple pillars. His discipline and strategy made him a global leader. These examples show that self-sufficiency doesn't depend on where you're born, but on how you choose to live. And here arises a provocation. If self-sufficiency is possible, why do so many people remain trapped in dependence? The answer lies in mindset. Many are afraid to take the first step, afraid to risk, afraid of losing. But the truth is, the biggest risk is doing nothing. It's continuing in the same cycle year after year, hoping circumstances will change on their own. The self-sufficient person breaks this cycle because they understand that freedom isn't something you receive. It's something you build. In brick by brick, choice by choice, until one day you realize the chains have broken and you might wonder, where do I start? The answer isn't in magic recipes, but in small, consistent actions. Building an emergency fund, studying investments, learning a new skill that can generate extra income, organizing your household finances. These are simple steps, but when taken together, they create an unshakable foundation. And when that foundation is firm, something even more powerful is born, the confidence that you can thrive under any circumstances. But there's one detail that needs to be said. Financial self-sufficiency is only one part of the millionaire mindset. There's an even deeper level, a power that shapes not only our wallets but also our way of thinking, feeling, and living. And that's precisely what we'll explore next. Some names stand as beacons of light for centuries. They not only accumulated wealth, but also illuminated paths for millions of people around the world. They understood a powerful principle. Before conquering the outside world, one must conquer one's own mind. Napoleon Hill, for example, began his journey as a curious young journalist, penniless and without great prospects. His life changed when he was assigned to interview Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men of his time. Carnegie didn't give him gold, an inheritance, or a privileged position. He gave him a task: to investigate the habits of America's greatest millionaires for 20 years and discover what made them different. Hill accepted the challenge and immersed himself in interviews with giants like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Theodore Roosevelt, and many others. The result was a set of principles that changed the course of generations. Think and grow rich. He revealed that true wealth is not a coincidence, but a consequence of faith, burning desire, visualization, autosuggestion, and persistent action. Hill showed that anyone, by aligning mind and purpose, could manifest abundance. Warren Buffett is another brilliant example. Owner of one of the greatest fortunes in history, he didn't become rich through luck or risky bets. Buffett became wealthy by cultivating something many despise: patience. From an early age, he understood that the secret lay in investing in solid assets and waiting for time to act in his favor. At 11, he bought his first stocks. He wasn't a precocious genius in the traditional sense, but rather someone disciplined, who read compulsively, studied, observed, and had the courage to think long-term. While the market chased immediate profits, he planted trees that would only provide shade decades later. To this day, Buffett dedicates 5 to 6 hours a day to reading. His philosophy is simple: the best investment you can make is in yourself, and see how it resonates. Whether you're in Brazil or on Wall Street, the lesson is the same. Those who invest in knowledge, discipline, and vision always reap the rewards because the world may change. But wisdom never loses value. In Brazil, we also have beacons that prove how the millionaire mentality can flourish in any soil. Jorge Paulo Lemann, for example, built empires with discipline and meritocracy. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he believed that well-prepared young people could change the market. It was this belief that led him to found groups that today control global brands. Luisa Trajano, in turn, is an example of how vision and empathy can transform businesses into legacies. She didn't inherit a ready-made fortune, but rather took over a family store and, with courage, boldness, and human leadership, transformed it into the giant we know as Magazine Luiza. Her story shows that wealth isn't just about numbers, but about impact. She prospered without sacrificing humanity, proving that spirituality and abundance can go hand in hand. These figures, Hill, Buffett, Lemann, Trajano, and so many others, have something in common: they didn't wait for perfect conditions. They created them. They didn't bow to crises, but used them as fertile ground. They didn't allow themselves to be paralyzed by fear, but transformed fear into discipline and discipline into results. Their stories remind us that you don't have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth to achieve life's glory. You just need to adopt the attitude of learner, visionary, and builder. And perhaps you're wondering, but how can I apply these principles to my daily life, practically, now? And that's precisely what we'll explore next. Some names shine like beacons in the darkness. They not only accumulated wealth, but also proved that a disciplined mind, connected to a purpose, can transform entire destinies. Napoleon Hill is perhaps the greatest example of this legacy. As a young man, he had no fortune, no influence, not even great prospects. All he possessed was an insatiable curiosity and a desire to understand why some people achieved so much, while others lived limited lives. By accepting Andrew Carnegie's mission to investigate for 20 years the lives of the richest men of his time, Hill immersed himself in a human laboratory of success. He interviewed Ford, Edison, Roosevelt, and Rockefeller. He discovered that the difference lay not only in talent, but in the way these men cultivated their minds. The work Think and Grow Rich was born from this process and remains to this day a manual of transformation. It's no wonder that entire generations have been shaped by its pages. But Hill wasn't the only one to prove the power of a focused mind. Warren Buffett is another living example of this truth. He didn't follow market fads or gamble on financial lotteries. His wealth was born from patience, discipline, and constant reading. While many sought shortcuts, Buffett cultivated roots. He bought stocks as a teenager, made mistakes, learned, adjusted, and continued studying. His routine is a testament: hours of reading, studying, and analyzing every day. And when asked about the secret to his success, his answer is always simple: invest in yourself. This phrase may seem small, but it conceals a transformative principle. Those who invest in themselves open doors that no one else can close. In Brazil, we also find minds that challenge the logic of scarcity. Silvio Santos started out as a street vendor selling pens. He could have settled into poverty, but he dreamed big. His voice, which echoed in the streets, became the instrument for creating one of the largest communications empires in the country. Yabilio Diniz transformed a neighborhood bakery into one of Brazil's largest supermarket chains, facing crises, fierce competition, and even kidnapping. Jorge Paulo Lemann built global empires because he believed in the power of excellence and meritocracy. Luisa Trajano dared to lead in a male-dominated environment and transformed Magazine Luiza into a benchmark for innovation and customer service. None of them started out ready-made. They all started small, but they carried something greater than resources: a mindset of abundance. And if we broaden our horizons even further, we'll see that this wisdom isn't new. The Bible is replete with examples of men and women who understood the power of vision and discipline. Joseph, betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, had every reason to give up. But he persisted, cultivated wisdom and faithfulness, and became governor of Egypt, saving entire nations from famine. Solomon, known for his wisdom, asked for understanding instead of wealth and ended up receiving both. These examples show that true prosperity begins in the invisible, in the mind, in faith, in vision, and then manifests itself in the outer world. What unites Napoleon Hill, Buffett, Silvio Santos, Trajano, Jose, and so many others is the same principle. They didn't wait for perfect conditions, they created them. They didn't let fear guide them, but transformed fear into discipline. They refused to be held hostage by circumstances, but decided to be the masters of their own destiny. They prove that thriving isn't a genetic inheritance, it's a daily choice. And perhaps the big question for us is, how can we translate these principles into concrete practices capable of changing the routine of an ordinary person? This is the bridge we need to cross next. There comes a time when the greatest transformation happens not externally, but within. It's as if a silent penny drops, revealing that prosperity isn't just about paying bills, but about identity. This is where the millionaire mindset is born, not in the bank balance, but deep within, in the non-negotiable decision to no longer accept living a small life. The true turning point begins when someone looks in the mirror and realizes they can no longer repeat phrases of defeat, living patterns of self-sabotage, and shrinking from their own potential. It's as if the soul screams, "Enough!" At that moment, it doesn't matter how much money is or isn't in the account. What matters is who they decide to be from then on, and this decision involves a break. Breaking with old beliefs that echo from childhood. Money is dirty, poor but honest. This isn't for people like us. Breaking with the inner voices that repeat that it's not worth trying, that it's better not to dream big, that it's dangerous to take risks. Breaking with the "let life take me" culture and taking the reins. This break doesn't happen overnight, but begins with small choices that accumulate. It's the discipline of saying no to impulse buying, of waking up earlier to study, of using free time to learn instead of endless distractions. It's the faith that God hasn't called us to mediocrity, but to abundance. It's the courage to take steps, even when we're afraid. And here comes a fundamental principle. Life responds not only to what you desire, but to who you are. The law of attraction doesn't return a wish made only verbally, but rather an identity lived from within. There's no point in saying, "I want to prosper," if in practice you live every day reaffirming scarcity. It's like planting beans and expecting to harvest wheat. Impossible. The harvest will always be consistent with the seed. That's why millionaires don't just ask for wealth. They become people who vibrate wealth. They reprogram their minds until believing in abundance becomes natural. They create habits that sustain this new version. They read daily, meditate, write, plan, serve, surround themselves with people who also dream big. And little by little, their identity aligns with their vision. This is where many stumble. They want results without inner transformation. They want external change without internal change. But those who have already walked this journey know that true prosperity is a reflection of who you choose to be. And perhaps this is the strongest call at this point, to let go of the old identity with its limiting beliefs, to make room for the new. Because only when you truly decide who you are, do the universe, people, and opportunities begin to respond in sync. And the question remains, if identity is what defines the millionaire mindset, what are the first practical steps to begin aligning thought, emotion, and action in everyday life? Thinking big isn't a luxury, nor a whim, much less arrogance. Thinking big is an act of applied faith. It's the ability to look at an ordinary life and see within it the embryo of something extraordinary. It's looking at the tight routine, the overdrawn accounts, the humble neighborhood, and still carrying within oneself the vision of a future that doesn't fit with the present limitations. Thinking big is daring to believe when everyone around you says it's impossible. It's having eyes for the future in a body still trapped in the present. It's as if imagination were an open window to a reality that, though invisible now, pulsates with possibility. The scarcity mindset calls this madness, but the millionaire mindset knows it's the first step to any great achievement. Silvio Santos, for example, started out selling pens on the streets. His background was anything but grand. Simple clothes, little money, no prospects. But in his mind, there was already a radio station, an empire. He used his voice as a seed, believed in the impossible, persisted in the improbable, and built the extraordinary. The same goes for David facing Goliath. In human eyes, there was no chance. A frail young man against a seasoned warrior. But David didn't think small. He didn't limit his vision to what he saw. He thought like someone who knew God was greater, and he won because he believed in the invisible more than the visible. Thinking big, in everyday life, means exchanging questions of scarcity for questions of expansion. Instead of asking, how will I survive this month? And ask, how can I create new sources of income? Instead of complaining, nothing works for me, ask, what is this situation trying to teach me? It's changing your lens, adjusting your language, rejecting the mental pettiness that reduces dreams to crumbs. It's creating the habit of writing bold goals on paper, dreaming out loud, and putting yourself in environments that challenge your mind to go further. Those who read biographies of great men and women begin to think differently. Those who expose themselves to stories of overcoming adversity realize that greatness is possible. Those who feed on examples of courage begin to cultivate courage. And herein lies a powerful detail. The universe responds to boldness. Small dreams don't move the heavens, but big dreams attract movement. The law of attraction, the law of vibration, biblical faith itself. They all point in the same direction. What you project with intensity begins to align with your reality. Thinking big is like adjusting the frequency of a radio. The more you tune into the station of abundance, the more signals you receive. It doesn't mean delirium or escaping reality, but rather living today with the attitude of someone who knows where they're going. And the question that arises is, how can you sustain this vision in moments when reality seems to deny everything you believe? There are days when everything seems to be working against you. The electricity bill is due on the same day as the rent, the phone rings with yet another charge, and the refrigerator seems to echo. Your heart sinks, your mind fills with doubts, and the weight of the world seems to fall upon your shoulders. It's in this scenario that the scarcity mentality raises its white flag. It screams, "Give up! There's no point, you weren't born to prosper." Many stop right at this point, believing the crisis is proof there's no way out. But those with a millionaire mentality interpret the same scenario differently. For them, pain isn't a sentence, it's training. Scarcity isn't an end, it's a passage. The crisis isn't an enemy, it's a teacher. The truth is, all great wealth builders have gone through such moments. Walt Disney slept on park benches after a bankruptcy. Henry Ford went bankrupt more than once before founding the Ford Motor Company. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter while living on government assistance, being rejected by several publishers. What they had in common was not an absence of failures, but a quiet obstinacy to keep going even when nothing made sense. Napoleon Hill said, Most people give up when they're one step away from success, and that step is often the most painful. It's like a prospector who digs for years, stopping just inches from a gold vein. Persisting when everything screams stop is what separates ordinary stories from extraordinary ones. And how do you maintain this persistence? By creating support systems. Millionaires don't rely on motivation because they know that motivation is like a candle flame. It sways with the slightest breeze. They build pathways, routines that keep them on track even when their emotions waver. They write down their goals daily to remember why. They reread their own reasons on dark days. They visualize victories to reignite the flame. They use empowering phrases to silence doubt. This too shall pass. I am bigger than this problem. Victory is just ahead. They make prayer a refuge, gratitude an exercise, and discipline a shield. These rituals are like anchors. When the storm rocks the boat, they prevent it from sinking. Persistence doesn't mean ignoring reality, but facing it courageously. It means acknowledging debts, reorganizing accounts, negotiating when necessary, but not letting the weight overwhelm your purpose. It means acting even when afraid, moving forward even with little, believing even without immediate proof. It means remembering that the righteous may fall 7 times, but always get up, Proverbs 24:16. It means believing like Paul, who said, "When I am weak, then I am strong," 2 Corinthians 12:10. It means understanding that faith doesn't eliminate pain, but gives strength to overcome it. And in this process, one discovers that the crisis didn't come to bury them, but to polish them. And here's a provocation. If persistence can transform failure into fuel, how can we use that same energy to build lasting financial independence and peace without relying on external factors? This is the next key we need to unlock. Few people realize, but the greatest battlefield isn't external, it's internal. It's within the mind that victories and defeats are decided. And that's precisely why millionaires use a powerful tool, often ridiculed by those who don't understand, autosuggestion. It involves speaking to oneself firmly, emotionally, and repeatedly until the unconscious mind accepts a new truth. It seems simple enough, but it conceals a reprogramming mechanism capable of changing destinies. The unconscious doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination. It records as truth what is repeated intensely. If someone repeats phrases of scarcity every day, "I can't," "I'm unlucky," "money only brings problems," the mind registers this as programming. But if someone declares with emotion every day, "I am capable," "I was born to prosper," "abundance flows to me," sooner or later, the identity adjusts to these words. Great athletes have used this principle for decades. Muhammad Ali constantly said, "I am the greatest." And he repeated it so many times that it became true for the world to see. Cristiano Ronaldo, known for his almost superhuman discipline, is another living example of autosuggestion in action. He trained harder than others because he already saw himself as the best. And this already seeing is the secret. Before being recognized, he recognized himself. Before being applauded, he applauded himself. This conviction shaped his routine and, consequently, his results. In the financial and business fields, the process is the same. Those who insist on declaring themselves small, limited, unlucky, end up living that identity. Those who insist on declaring themselves disciplined, courageous, abundant, inevitably begin to act in alignment with these declarations. But this is where many stumble. They wait to feel before acting. They want to wait for motivation, inspiration, or willpower. Millionaires understand that motivation is fickle, but action is a choice. They don't ask if they feel like it. They simply do it. They repeat their affirmations, write down their goals, visualize their victories even on days when their mind screams, "No use." And little by little, repetition creates new neural pathways. It's like learning to drive. At first it's strange, uncomfortable, and seems forced. But after repeating it long enough, it becomes natural. The same happens with the mind. Today, declaring "I am prosperous" may sound false, but tomorrow it will be your identity, because you planted it within yourself. This discipline of autosuggestion isn't a cheap trick. It's a survival tool. It's what keeps someone afloat when external reality doesn't yet confirm what they believe inside. It's like a farmer planting in the dark. He doesn't see anything sprout, but he keeps watering because he knows the seed is there. Autosuggestion is watering the seed of a new identity until it blooms. It's declaring the future until it becomes present. And when that happens, your entire life falls into place. But then a natural question arises. If autosuggestion shapes identity and creates a new way of thinking, what happens when this new mind begins to face the greatest pressures of financial and emotional life head-on? Few understand, but the mind is like a stage where the protagonist and the enemy are the same person. Whoever wins this internal battle earns the right to win in the external world. That's why autosuggestion isn't a detail, but one of the most powerful foundations of the millionaire mindset. The secret lies in conscious repetition, declaring daily, with emotion and clarity, what isn't yet visible, but already exists in the realm of faith. The brain, in its complexity, doesn't differentiate between imagination and reality. Everything repeated with intensity and feeling becomes a record. This is exactly what makes a student who always repeats, "I'm bad at math," experience academic failures, and what makes an entrepreneur who repeats, "I'm going to build something great," move forward, even amidst setbacks. Stories of world-renowned figures prove this principle. Thomas Edison, who failed more than 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb, didn't accept the word failure. He said, "I didn't fail. I just discovered 1,000 ways not to make the light bulb." This is the essence of autosuggestion, shaping your internal interpretation until your external vision aligns. Michael Jordan, considered by many to be the greatest basketball player in history, constantly repeated that mistakes were part of the process and that each missed shot brought him closer to the next success. He programmed himself to see not defeat, but practice. Oprah Winfrey, before becoming a billionaire, assured herself that she would not accept being a victim of circumstances and that her voice would reach. And despite all the adversities of her childhood, she remained true to this conviction until the whole world recognized her. Another fascinating example is Jim Carrey. Before he became famous, he wrote himself a check for $10 million, dated a few years in the future, and carried it in his wallet as a symbol of his faith. He told himself he would be paid that amount for acting. Years later, right on schedule, he signed his first multi-million-dollar Hollywood contract. Elon Musk also illustrates this principle. His vision of colonizing Mars, or revolutionizing the automobile industry, was not born from tangible reality, but from a daily repetition of crazy ideas that he nurtured with discipline and courage. While the world called it impossible, he already saw himself living the improbable. Autosuggestion isn't just theory. It's a practice confirmed by great leaders, inventors, artists, and entrepreneurs. What they all have in common is that they decided to repeat to themselves words that seemed exaggerated until they weren't. The Bible already said in Joel 3:10, "Let the weak say, 'I'm strong.'" This is autosuggestion in its spiritual essence, not denying weakness, but declaring a greater identity. This principle is universal, crossing cultures, religions, and borders. Gandhi deeply believed that his words would shape the reality of India, and he repeated his vision of freedom until it became indisputable. Nelson Mandela, during years of imprisonment, sustained his mind with the repeated conviction that one day he would see his people free. And here's the crucial point. Millionaires, like these great figures, don't wait to feel before they begin. They understand that action shapes emotion, not the other way around. They write their affirmations even on tired days, repeat their declarations even when the situation seems to negate them. Visualize the future even when the present is suffocating. Over time, the mind creates new pathways, new reflexes, a new identity. And when the mind changes, life changes along with it. But this brings us to an even deeper point. What happens when this new identity encounters real pressures from the world of finance, business, and relationships? Does this mental programming truly sustain the person in critical situations? Few people realize that the biggest prison doesn't have iron bars, but invisible shackles called financial ignorance. Thousands grow up hearing phrases that seem innocent but become chains in their minds. Money is dirty. Rich people don't go to heaven. Better poor but honest. These beliefs, repeated generation after generation, create a mentality of scarcity so profound that even those who work hard end up chasing their own tails. And the truth is, effort without direction is like rowing in circles. It wastes energy, but gets you nowhere. Financial education, in this scenario, isn't a luxury. It's liberation. It's the beacon that shows that the problem isn't money itself, but how it's viewed and used. Millionaires learned this early. Warren Buffett, for example, bought his first shares at age 11. What set him apart wasn't the value of the investment, but his curiosity to learn how money worked. He discovered early on that wealth isn't just about earning, but about multiplying and protecting it. Steve Jobs, while not a financial guru in the classic sense, deeply understood the value of intangible assets like innovation, brand, and vision. He knew that every idea could become an empire if cultivated with discipline. Jeff Bezos started his Amazon business in a garage, but from the beginning, he had a clear financial mindset. Reinvesting profits, thinking long-term, creating value before harvesting. These are living examples that financial education isn't just about knowing how to calculate interest rates, but also understanding principles that change destinies. In everyday life, a lack of this knowledge creates common situations. People who receive their salaries and immediately think about spending, never about multiplying them. Families who buy liabilities, believing them to be achievements while silently accumulating debt. Young people who know how to memorize physics formulas but don't understand what passive income is. The difference between assets and liabilities, so simple and so powerful, would be enough to change the lives of millions if taught early. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes it out. It seems obvious. But how many people buy luxury cars to get into debt, believing they are growing? Meanwhile, millionaires buy assets, real estate, stocks, companies, royalties, knowledge. The greatest of these, always, is investing in oneself. Financial education also requires an emotional breakthrough. There's no point in learning about investments if deep down you still believe that getting rich is wrong. That's why so many people start courses and use spreadsheets, only to fall back into the same old habits. True transformation begins in the mind. By reprogramming beliefs, people begin to see money not as an enemy, but as a tool. The Bible teaches in Proverbs 4:7, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Then get wisdom, and with all your possessions get understanding." This applies to everything, but especially to money. Without wisdom, it becomes a curse. With understanding, it transforms into a blessing, prosperity, and a legacy. And perhaps the greatest lesson is this. Financial education isn't just about getting rich, it's about freedom. It's about not depending on favors, bosses, or fragile systems. It's about waking up knowing you have a choice. It's about living without invisible chains holding you back. When someone understands this, they stop chasing money and begin to attract wealth, not by chance, but through strategy and clarity. But here, a new, inevitable question arises. If financial education liberates, what's the next step to consolidate this freedom in the form of true independence and inner peace? There's a silent freedom few people know, the freedom from dependence. Not depending on favors, a single paycheck, an unstable boss, a government that changes rules from one moment to the next, or even family members who can use money as an instrument of control. Financial independence goes far beyond accumulated figures. It's above all the ability to choose. It's being able to say no to a proposal that violates your values without fear of losing your livelihood. It's being able to decide where to live, what to eat, how to invest your time. This freedom brings with it an invisible weight that disappears. The constant anxiety of, what if the money runs out? When the mind discovers it can sustain itself, the heart breathes in peace. Millionaires build this peace strategically. They know that relying on a single source of income is like building a house on shaky ground. If the ground gives way, everything else falls with it. That's why they create multiple pillars: long-term investments, real estate, side businesses, royalties, digital products, strategic partnerships. Think of figures like Richard Branson, owner of the Virgin Group, who created companies in different sectors, from space tourism to music, precisely to avoid relying on a single market. Or Elon Musk, who diversifies into completely different areas, from electric cars to solar energy and space exploration. The logic is simple. If one area suffers, another sustains. This mentality isn't just for billionaires. Today, with the internet, anyone can start building digital assets, be it a book, an online course, a channel, an online store, seeds that, when watered, transform into sources of income. But the impact of self-sufficiency isn't just practical. It's psychological and spiritual. When a person achieves independence, they don't accept just any offer out of fear of scarcity. They negotiate with poise, work with purpose, and choose with clarity. This changes the way they relate to the world. Take Oprah Winfrey, for example. Her fortune isn't just a reflection of her talent, but of her decision to never depend emotionally or financially on anyone for her voice. She created her own platforms, controlled her own channels, and built her own empire. This independence gave her something no amount of money can buy: the freedom to be true to herself. Ultimately, financial independence is an act of self-love. It's declaring, "I love myself enough not to live as a hostage." Those who depend financially on someone carry an invisible risk: manipulation. It could be a boss who uses their salary as a weapon, a spouse who keeps the other person trapped by dependence, or even a social system that perpetuates mediocrity. Breaking free from this is an act of maturity. It doesn't mean rejecting help, but it does mean not making it the basis of your life. And this is only possible with mental reprogramming and practical discipline. Spending less than you earn, investing consistently, creating new sources of income, and studying continuously. The Bible reminds us in Proverbs 13:11, "Dishonestly gained money will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase." It is through little by little that freedom is built, and the most beautiful thing is that, when this freedom arrives, life expands. Smiles become lighter, dreams bolder, steps firmer. People realize they no longer need to ask permission to prosper because they've built their own foundations. But this journey doesn't stop there. After independence is achieved, a new, even more profound stage emerges. That of looking to the examples of thinkers and millionaires who changed the world and understanding how their principles can be applied today, in each individual's context. Some names span generations like true beacons. They didn't just amass fortunes, they illuminated paths. Their legacies are not just made of numbers in bank accounts, but of ideas that shaped entire societies, businesses, and cultures. When we look at figures like Napoleon Hill, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, Jorge Paulo Lemann, or Luisa Trajano, what we see is not just material wealth, but a unique way of thinking, a mental pattern that preceded any external achievement. Studying them is like holding a mirror up to yourself. More than admiring their trajectories, it's recognizing that each of them started out exactly like any other ordinary person, with doubts, challenges, limitations, but made a silent decision to think differently. Napoleon Hill is perhaps the most emblematic example. A curious young man, apprenticed to Andrew Carnegie, he spent more than 20 years interviewing the richest and most influential men of his time. What he discovered was not a secret reserved for a privileged few, but universal principles: burning desire, faith, visualization, autosuggestion, persistent action. His work, Think and Grow Rich, it's not just a book, but a mind map. When Hill said, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve," he wasn't talking about empty philosophy, but about a spiritual and practical mechanism for manifestation. His life was proof that wealth begins in the invisible. Warren Buffett, in turn, embodies quiet discipline. While many seek shortcuts, he invested brick by brick, habit by habit, always focusing on the long term. At age 11, he bought his first stocks, and to this day, he dedicates 5 to 6 hours a day to reading. What sets him apart is not only his billion-dollar fortune, but his clarity that the greatest investment anyone can make is in themselves. Buffett wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He built his freedom through discipline, consistency, and vision. His life shows that wealth isn't achieved all at once, but accumulates little by little, like compound interest applied to character. Steve Jobs brought another lesson: the power of intangible assets. For him, wealth lay in innovation, design, and experience. Jobs didn't just create products. he created cultural revolutions. His secret wasn't just technology, but vision. He envisioned the extraordinary and worked to make it a reality, even though he was called a dreamer. This boldness to imagine first and build later is the essence of the big thinking we discussed. Similarly, Elon Musk applies this principle today. By insisting that colonizing Mars is possible, or that electric cars can replace combustion engines, he defies the logic of the present in the name of a vision of the future. His fortune is a consequence of his courage to sustain the improbable until it becomes inevitable. Oprah Winfrey is perhaps the greatest example of overcoming adversity among them. A poor, black woman, abused as a child, she had every reason to become a statistic of pain. But she chose a different path. She told herself she wouldn't be a victim, built her voice, created her own platforms, and became a billionaire. More than wealth, Oprah achieved something rare: the freedom to speak authentically and use her influence to transform millions of lives. Her success wasn't inherited. It was decision, discipline, and faith. In Brazil, we also have beacons of the millionaire mentality. Jorge Paulo Lemann, who believed that talented young people could transform the business world, built global empires through excellence, meritocracy, and innovation. Luisa Trajano, with sensitivity and courage, took Magazine Luiza from a regional store to one of the largest chains in the country. She understood early on that wealth lies not only in numbers, but in human impact, in caring for people, in the value of leading with empathy. Both demonstrate that you don't have to be born at the top to get there. You need clarity of vision and discipline in execution. What do all these names have in common? None of them waited for ideal conditions. None of them were born into the perfect scenario. They all created. They created a mindset before creating a fortune. They reprogrammed their minds before seeing results. They held visions when no one believed. They sowed greatness to reap greatness. And this is precisely what the law of vibration, of cause and effect, of applied faith shows us. Thoughts build solid realities. Those who contemplate greatness become great. As Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, said, "The soul becomes what it contemplates." But here's the most provocative question. If these men and women, each in their own time and context, managed to transform ideas into empires, wouldn't they be living proof that the only thing separating us from them is the way we think and act today? The question that resonates is, how long will you allow yourself to think small when you were created to expand? Now that you've come this far, the question is, what will you do with all this? Will you just listen and continue living the same way? Or will you put into practice the principles that can change the course of your life? Remember, it's not a lack of time, luck, or resources that holds you back. It's a lack of decision. So I ask you, what belief will you abandon today? What new habit will you adopt starting tomorrow? It's no use just admiring the stories of millionaires, leaders, and visionaries you've heard here. They were no different from you. The only difference is that they decided to act when everyone else was standing still. True transformation doesn't happen in theory, but the moment you take the first step. So if you truly desire a life of abundance, apply it, experiment, and persist. And before you leave, make a simple choice that could be the start of something extraordinary. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and keep learning with me. Because if this video planted a seed in you, the next ones will water it until the harvest arrives. Your prosperity begins with the decision to stay on this path. So tell me in the comments, what lesson most awakened something within you today? If this video spoke deeply to you, I have a special gift for you. Imagine having in your hands a complete kit with everything you need to accelerate your journey to prosperity. I'm talking about Millionaire Mindset Master Kit, an exclusive combo of ebooks, audios, and challenges that bring together the greatest secrets of the millionaire mindset. Inside it, you will find the Guide Millionaire morning routine to start each day as the big winners. The Law of Attraction for Wealth, a step-by-step guide to applying the law of attraction to money. Think like a millionaire, which brings the best of Napoleon Hill with applicable exercises. In the program 30 Days to a Rich Mindset, a daily plan to shape your mind for good. But it doesn't stop there. You'll also have audio from affirmations for wealth and abundance, guided meditations of Law of Attraction, guided meditations, and practical training Millionaire Habits Bootcamp. In addition, the course, The Science of Getting Rich, explained, based on the Wallace Wattles classic. To close, you still receive 2 transformative challenges, the 21-Day Wealth Manifestation Challenge and the 90 Days to Financial Freedom. Practical plans that combine mindset and productivity. And as an exclusive bonus, Letters of Attraction, ready-made affirmations in PDF format to print or use on your cell phone. This is the kit that can accelerate your transformation and put you on the right path to prosperity. The link is in the description. Click now and get yours, Millionaire Mindset Master Kit. Because the future you want doesn't start tomorrow. It starts today with the decision you make now.